engaging the community since 1970. This is WIS Awareness.
Good morning and thank you for joining us for Awareness. I'm your host, Megan Norman. In an event hosted by the Friends of Richland Library, Lowcountry artist Jonathan Green opened up to a few questions about his life and artwork. I had the pleasure of interviewing him in the lobby of the South Carolina State Museum. But before, the result of two art worlds colliding in a vibrant display of color and movement. 4 dancers from the Columbia City Ballet performed snippets from Off the Wall and onto the stage, dancing the art of Jonathan Green. His paintings come to life through the artistic collaboration of art and dance. During the interview, Green talks about this form of self-expression and how it enhances the symbolism and meaning of his works of art. Tell us when you first discovered your passion for painting.
I don't know if I ever discovered a passion for painting since I was told that I was a painter before I even came out of the womb. And I think it has more to do with being born with the placenta membrane. I was born with the call. And, you know, in the days of when, in communities where you have a series of generations of people, elders, knowing about children, knowing how to read the stars, knowing the destiny of youth, I was always told that I was special. I could do any and everything I wanted to do. And you know, after a while, you start to believe that.
Now, artists are storytellers and vice versa. We talk about what we know, what we've lived, and that is certainly evident in your artwork. How has your culture shaped you and inspired your artwork? And for those who aren't familiar with the Gullah and Geechee cultures, give us a little bit of background.
You know, if we go back 20, 30,000 years ago into caves, we see drawings. I mean, that was magical. The fact that someone could create the image of a human, animals, plants. And so I'm a believer that art is a part of our DNA. You know, we talk about the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic. Well, there's a 4th R, and that's art. It certainly is one of the earliest forms of communication. There are few records in terms of a form of communication that exists today like cave drawings. So when your little ones, grand ones, are scratching on the floor or marking things, that's a part of their DNA. That's how they describe themselves, express themselves, and tell the story. And it's very important to tell the story. And that's the work of the artist. For myself, it was extremely important to put a face and a story to my folk from Gardens Corner, South Carolina. I was not thinking of the larger context of Black people, Gullah Geechee people. I was only thinking of the home spot of Jonathan Green. And having the ability to go to an art institute, I felt I had won the lottery when I was accepted to go to the Art Institute of Chicago. It afforded me an opportunity to learn about many, many other artists and what they did, and the importance of being the storyteller. One of my earliest and first mentors was Mr. Jacob Lawrence, and he said to me, "Jonathan, you are a storyteller. Tell your story."
One thing that I personally find pretty fascinating about some of your artwork is some of the characters are faceless, not expressionless, of course, but without faces. Why do you do that? What is the meaning behind that?
Well, there are 2 stories. The first story, not the most important story, but the first story is that children really do not recognize facial features and expressions. They don't. They can recognize body shapes, sizes, smells, and color. That's what children recognize. For me, I recognize my grandmother's skirt tail. That was the most important connection to a human being, was being able to hold on to her skirt tail. And that would afford me a sense of comfort. I remember once I was at a Memorial Day celebration and I was holding on to my grandmother's skirt tail, and for some reason, I guess I saw cotton candy or something, and I dropped it and grabbed another piece of fabric, and it wasn't her. So that was my first experience of look into the face of your people so you know who they are.
Whose was it? You talked about some of your time spent in Chicago. How did your education help shape your artwork?
Education is formal for me. It is so important to read, to write. And I'm dyslexic, so I had many issues in terms of reading and writing until my grandmother introduced me to my two best friends, and that's my left and right index fingers. And that could help me to read a sentence without the words moving up and down and about and flipping off the pages. And it was through being able to contact the words, control the movement of the words, that reading became extremely important. And it was through reading that I had a better grasp for painting as an artist. All of my Christmas gifts for 10 years were paint by number sets. So I had the fastest Christmas of anyone on the planet, probably. And I never painted within the lines. I never could do that. And I think a part of that is having been dyslexic as well. So for me, art has always been a major part of my life. I don't know a time that I have been without it. And I think having the ability to go to a great institution such as the School of the Art Institute, which then later built a museum, which is very important. So that museum houses one of the greatest collections of impressionistic artwork. Back in the day when I was a student in the 70s, you could actually go into the galleries and set up an easel and paint from the masters, which most of the students, especially in the painting department, were required to do. So that was a daily activity for me, being able to go into these beautiful galleries with incredible artwork and just paint what I saw. And then it was just a matter of time between making the connection of understanding what's on the wall and understanding the history of what's on the wall. And that's why librarians were so important to me. My very, very first teachers were librarians because I had access to books, pictures. Someone taught me how to make sense of what I was reading. And for an artist, that's crucial. You have to know the stories that you're telling. And one of the ways of knowing those stories, aside from actually living and experiencing those stories, is being able to read about those stories.
Some of the themes in those stories, spirituality, culture, diversity, unity, do you think those themes come across in the ballet we just saw? And how did that idea come about?
Well, I know what does come across in that ballet are those bodies. And the form of expression through the human body. The human body is an incredible instrument. It's how we express ourselves. It tells one how we feel about ourselves. And movement and dance is as much a part of a culture as anything else in a culture. People always express themselves through dance. Most recently, we express ourselves from what's called religious line dance. You know, you see people in churches, these dance groups in churches dancing. You have to express yourself through movement. And it's so important for children to learn dance. From dance, you get a sense of balance, style, grace. And again, you're telling a story. The arts is crucially important to children. And anytime you leave out the arts in the lives of children, you are creating a tremendous and difficult existence for a child.
If someone were to look at one of your paintings and ask, who is Jonathan Green, what would that painting reveal to them, or what do you hope it would reveal to them about who you are?
Oh boy, these questions are getting difficult. I'm in love with every painting that I have painted, and it is because of the hours I spend into a work. So even though you might see a woman or a child or elders in the community, I'm a part of all of those characters in my work. I have seen and have experienced. I have a very clear understanding of humanity, of sensuality, of femininity, masculinity, movement, expression, all of those things. And I think to be an artist, you have to have evolved in understanding the importance of humanity.
More from my interview with Jonathan Green next, including his thoughts on the church shooting in Charleston.
Over the summer, as you well know, the massacre in Charleston really changed all of us. It changed the state, it changed the nation. Being from the Lowcountry, how did that affect you? And are you going to at some point do any sort of tribute to the Mother Emanuel 9?
Again, because I know the history of the Emmanuel Church. It is a church that's always been steep into controversy in terms of its important issues of race, religion, politics. And what happened at Emmanuel is not about a person of any one specific color, origin. It is a situation that is permeating our culture today because we are not giving our children what they need. It's so unfortunate today as an African-American kid that anyone can reduce you to just being the descendant of slavery. It's so easy for us to focus on the negativity, what was put onto a culture rather than the people. How seldom do we hear the word Africa in our day-to-day languages and conversations amongst our friends and family? How seldom do we understand the history and what we have gone through? I have always advocated that I am amazed that we haven't killed each other off. And what happened at Emmanuel is a testimony to what can and will continue to happen if we don't put first priority in education for our children and tell them some truths about how and why we're here. Slavery isn't owned by black people. Everyone on this planet at some point in time has been enslaved as a people, as a group. So it's nothing new. Our schools are so important so that our children at least have a better understanding of history and culture so that they can defend themselves. And one of the most important things I hope to do in terms of my lifetime here is to be able to have children honestly defend themselves in conversations in regarding history.
So a tribute is in the works, is not in the works?
I'm a tribute. The artists are tributes. The writers are tributes. We have to continue to tell these stories. However, I am working on a project that's going to be at the airport. And what they're going to do simply is use the back of the book, the image on the back of Gullah Image's book. In that book, or in that painting, is a woman in front of a line of white linen. And you see, as the viewers looking upon that painting, 7 blackbirds. But you also see the shadows of 2 blackbirds, which adds up to 9 birds, which is, in my way, my homage to what has happened.
Very nice. Give us a day in the life of Jonathan Green. What time does your day start?
Well, I'm going to be a late riser tomorrow morning. My day usually starts at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm up at 3 because it's the only time I can get my work done. I can then take care of other businesses such as phone calls or emails or texting and all those other kinds of things. and when people come to the studio. And I really believe in trying to be as fresh and alive as I possibly can. And the only way I can do that is by first getting my work done, because if I don't do my work, I can't get any money. And if I can't get any money, I can't help much. So for the past, I would say 35 years, I've been getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, loving it. And I go to bed early. I'm in bed by 7. I don't care what's happening. My main meal in the course of the day, I have one meal, and that's my lunch meal. And I have a full meal with eating any and everything I want, and usually 2 beverages. I think that's good. You know, that's medicinal, you know. Invented by the monks. Beer, wine, champagne, bourbon, scotch, all monk duties. So I religiously feel responsible to have a cocktail a day. And then, you know, I look forward to having conversations with whatever or whomever the collectors that might come in, and finish up my work by 4 or 5 o'clock. And about 2 hours after that, unless I have an appointment such as this evening, I'm in bed gladly.
The conclusion to my sit-down interview with Jonathan Green, next.
Are you working on various projects simultaneously?
Yes, I'm usually working on 4 to 6 projects simultaneously. Took a leave of absence from the city of Charleston this afternoon. We are working with the UNESCO group, United Nations World Heritage Group, and we are vying to have Charleston become a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And so of course we were talking about all the things that everyone talks about related to history, furniture, buildings. They want to talk about living historical significance in the infrastructure of what creates something great. So we look at the great city of Charleston, where you had at any given time for almost 150 years population being 60% African American and 40% Euro-Americans. And the African Americans did all the work. So when you look at all those plantations and all those cities, you know, remember, all the bricks were made mostly by blacks. All of the buildings were constructed mostly by blacks. And then you have foodways and medicinal. You have a whole culture. So what the Europeans did with the acceptance of Africa was to remove generations, centuries of craft-oriented people and brought them here to create one of the most beautiful, idyllic, cultural landscape phenomena on the planet. And that is a lot to think about and a lot to work from. And as an artist, I'm spending much of my time creating these paintings because I put a call out to many artists, you know, hey guys, come on, let's paint some rice fields. Well, rice fields are not easy to paint. And people are not easy to paint in them. It's so easy to talk about the greatness of rice culture, but what's constantly left out of history are the people. That was really the gold in Carolina Gold, were those West African people. So as artists, we're taking the initiative and starting to paint some of these visual imageries to bring more an accurate depiction on the events that happened that allowed you to know about this incredible culture called the Gullah Geechee culture.
Now, you said you're in love with every piece you paint, but is there one that is your favorite or one that best represents you?
The most recently sold.
Great answer. And finally, a little bit more difficult of a question. What do you want your legacy to be? How will your artwork live on?
Well, I just never think about a legacy. I just think about getting up every morning and working as hard as I possibly can. You know, when you've been raised by a great-grandmother, in my case, the great Eloise Stewart Johnson, and she said, "You are what you do." So I never worry about what's going to happen to me afterwards or whatever kind of a legacy I leave behind. Because I know that after having produced well over 3,000 paintings, having about 4 or 5 books out there, if that's not a legacy, then there's nothing else I can do.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Megan.
A lot of laughs and great conversation with Lowcountry artist Jonathan Green. Stay with us. We'll be right back with the final thought. Everyone has a voice. It is important we all share our stories, whether it be through art, in a public forum, or mentoring one-on-one. Self-expression is a form of self-discovery, and we should all be growing and learning every day. Thank you to Jonathan Green for sharing his talents and telling his story. Share your story on our Awareness Facebook page. You can also connect with us on social media by using the hashtag Awareness10. Until next time, I'm Megan Norman. This is Awareness.